Football at Slack by Ted Hughes appeared in his 1979 poetic sequence Remains of Elmet. Elmet was a British Celtic kingdom around the 4th to the mid-7th century that corresponds to modern-day West Yorkshire, which is where Hughes was born, South Yorkshire and North Derbyshire. In Hughes's own preface to the collection, he describes the land of his birth and early childhood as follows. The Calder Valley, west of Halifax, was the last ditch of Elmet, the last British Celtic kingdom to fall to the Angles. For centuries it was considered a more or less uninhabitable wilderness, a notorious refuge for criminals, a hideout for refugees. Then in the early 1800s it became the cradle for the Industrial Revolution in textiles, and the Upper Calder became the hardest worked river in England. Throughout my lifetime, since 1930, I have watched the mills of the region and their attendant chapels die. Within the last 15 years the end has come. They're now virtually dead, and the population of the valley and the hillsides, so rooted for so long, is changing rapidly. While the collection does lament what Hughes feels is lost, it also celebrates the landscape and its people. Football at Slack describes a game of football that takes place during a storm on a hill above Slack, a hamlet to the north of Hebden Bridge in the county of West Yorkshire. Even though the gale is stealing the men's ball and the rain is soaking them to the skin, this bad weather only seems to add to their enthusiasm and joy, perhaps suggesting Hughes's admiration at the strength and resilience of the human spirit, as embodied in these West Yorkshiremen, in the face of adversity. The poem is written in free verse and comprises 8 stanzas of from 2 to 5 lines. It has no set metrical or rhythmic structure, although Hughes does combine varying line lengths with enjambment, end-stopping, and caesura to modulate the rhythm and to amplify meaning. There is no fixed rhyme scheme, although Hughes does create a sense of musicality and cohesion with sound patterning techniques, such as alliteration and consonants, where plosive b sounds predominate, e.g. blown ball, blew back, which give the poem a sense of energy. To enhance this further, there are also words which form a semantic field of movement, such as plunging, blown, bounced, jumped, spouted, blew, piled, threw, lowered, bobbed up, sank, leapt, bicycled, and flew. Hughes also forms a semantic field of water and wetness, with words such as spouted, water, rain, plastered, puddle, bobbed up, washed, and foundering. Hughes's diction is plain and simple, and he frequently uses repetition, such as ball, which appears 5 times, bounced, which appears 3 times, blown, which also appears 3 times, and jumped, which appears twice, although he does also employ simple language in novel ways, making extensive use of metaphor, simile, and personification throughout. The title, Football at Slack, gives no indication of the storm which is to feature so heavily in the poem, perhaps suggesting that because the men take the difficult conditions in their stride, even seeming to revel in them, Hughes considers it is barely worth mentioning. The poem begins, between plunging valleys on a bareback of hill, men in bunting colours bounced, and their blown ball bounced. The dramatic and dynamic nature of the West Yorkshire landscape is established right away in the very first line. The adjective plunging evokes the height and steepness of the hill upon which the men are playing. while the metaphorical bareback not only suggests the absence of trees at its summit, but also, in conjunction with plunging, conjures the image of a wild bucking horse that refuses to be tamed. The men are in bunting colours, or brightly coloured team jerseys, the adjectival noun bunting evoking a feeling of celebration in the way in which these small triangular flags flap and move about in the wind. The men bounced and their blown ball bounced. The repetition of the verb bounced, not only evoking the energy of the men, but also suggesting that the ball is just an extension of themselves. Note the alliteration here, the staccato, plosive but sounds in quick succession, mimicking both the men and the ball as they repeatedly hit the ground. Hughes establishes the powerful presence of the wind very early on in the poem to suggest that it is an additional player on the pitch. The second stanza continues, the blown ball jumped. The verb jumped here suggesting that it has a mind of its own, while the merry coloured men spouted like water to head it. Once again, Hughes refers to the men's colourful jerseys as a means of communicating their own cheerful demeanour. The euphonic, nasal alliteration of merry and men enhancing this idea. The simile spouted like water not only evokes their boundless energy as they throw themselves upwards like a jet of water in an attempt to head the ball, but also foreshadows the deluge of rain which will soon dampen their bodies, if not their spirits. In response, the ball blew away downwind. Note the dash at the end of the stanza, which leaves the reader momentarily suspended in much the same way as the ball is in the air. The rubbery men, however, soon bounced after it. The adjective rubbery, with its associations of elastic springiness and the repetition of the verb bounced, once more indicate that the ball is merely an extension of themselves. The consonance of the plosive but in rubbery and bounced enhances this idea of buoyancy and resilience. Meanwhile, the ball jumped up and out and hung in the wind over a gulf of treetops. The way the ball tantalisingly seems to threaten the continuance of the game as it momentarily leaves the pitch is enhanced by the polysyndeton in this image. Then they all shouted together and the blown ball blew back, almost as though the ball has gone into the crowd and the crowd has thrown it back, as it would in a stadium. Note how Hughes employs plosive alliteration in combination with polyptoton here, in the blown ball blew back, to emphasise the power of the wind. In the fourth stanza, we see the wind begin to build in ferocity as the storm finally breaks. Winds from fiery holes in heaven piled the hills darkening around them to awe them. The metaphor fiery holes in heaven possibly suggests lightning appearing to rip the sky apart, or the way in which the accumulating black clouds which are blocking the light are outlined by the sun behind them. Either way, it is an awe-inspiring sight for the men. Note the two instances of enjambment here to evoke the wind's increased power, the lines surging with the gale. Hughes now personifies the glare light as some kind of demented artist creating an action painting as it mixed its mad oils and threw glooms. Note how Hughes uses language in a unique way here, as he transforms the noun glare into an adjective and the uncountable noun gloom into a plural, as well as the mosaic of sound patterning with the alliterated glare and glooms. The liquid l here also picked up in light and oils, the alliterated mixed and mad with the nasal also picked up in glooms, as well as the assonance of the long oo sound in through glooms, to create an atmospheric and vivid image of the rapidly changing light and conditions. The stanza ends on the image of the onset of the rain as it lowered a steel press. A steel press is a piece of industrial machinery used to turn bars of steel into items such as bolts, plates or rods. Hughes seems to be employing this metaphor, therefore, to evoke the sheer weight and coldness of the rain as it threatens to flatten everything in its path. The men are soaked, with their hair plastered to their scalps, as they all just trod water to puddle glitter. Treading water is where you maintain an upright position in deep water by moving your feet with a walking action in order to try to stay afloat, and so emphasises the level of the rain's onslaught. The splashes the men create causing a puddle of glitter at their feet as the droplets catch the light. Note the full stop in the middle of the line to create a caesura, a momentary pause before their shouts bobbed up, metaphorically, to the surface, coming fine and thin, washed and happy. Rather than be defeated by the heavy downpour, the men instead have prevailed as it has cleansed rather than drowned them, and their spirits are high. The same, however, cannot be said for the landscape, as the humped world sank foundering and the valleys blued unthinkable under the depth of Atlantic depression. In other words, the hills seem to fill with water and sink, just like a ship does at sea during a storm, while the valleys are filled with a blue mist of rain droplets. Wet and windy weather in the UK is generally caused by a low pressure system known as a depression, originating in the Atlantic Ocean. But it is possible that Hughes is playing with the meaning of blued and depression here to personify the landscape, with the intention of suggesting that, unlike the men, it is negatively, psychologically affected by the bad weather. Note the predominance of one-syllable words in this stanza, with 5 in quick succession in the first line, as well as the heavy alliteration of the plosive d sound in depth and depression, which serve to weigh the language down, seemingly in sympathy with the landscape. Once more, Hughes ends the stanza on a dash, which is the first pause for 3.5 lines and serves to give more emphasis to the coordinating conjunction but, which starts the penultimate stanza and definitively separates the men from the conditions that have so beaten down the natural world. But the wingers leapt, they bicycled in air, and the goalie flew horizontal. The dynamic verbs leapt, bicycled and flew evoke how the men are energised by the weather and how they are throwing themselves wholeheartedly into the game as they go after the ball, shoot for the goal and attempt to save it. The poem ends on the image of the sun breaking through the clouds as the storm begins to dissipate. And once again a golden holocaust lifted the cloud's edge to watch them. Here the word Holocaust is not to be confused with Hitler's policy of exterminating the Jews during the Second World War, but is being used in its historical meaning of a sacrifice in which an offering was burned completely on an altar, and conjures the way the sun is starting to appear as though it is the flames on the edge of the clouds as they begin to catch fire. This not only suggests that there is something divine about the men's game, but also the way the sun is personified as it lifted the cloud's edge to watch them suggests that the men's indomitable spirits are powerful enough to make even the sun sit up and take notice. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos on English language topics and exam techniques and English literature texts.